Now, for the first time in the history of a democratic South Africa, the National Voters' Roll has surpassed the 27 million mark. The Electoral Commission hopes the number will increase as it gears up for the final voter registration, and that is happening this weekend. Now, the IEC has, however, raised concerns over 3 missions, namely Sudan, Israel, and Ukraine, that will be closed due to the conflicts in those countries and may prohibit South Africans from voting. Meanwhile, voter registration for inmates will conclude at 5 p.m. today.
37-year-old Luyanda Ntantiso is among the thousands of inmates who have registered to vote. Though life has brought momentary lapses, he has recovered well, managing to achieve an LLB in law and is well on his way to achieving a BA in psychology. He believes his vote will make a difference even behind bars.
I understand the process now. At first, I didn't care about voting. It didn't matter much. So in 2018, I got a funding to study. So I saw what the government is doing for someone like me behind bars. So from there, I started being conscious about voting. Hence, I studied law and all that stuff. So yes, it's working. I can see that. But obviously, it won't be perfect. Yes, it has its hiccups there and there. So personally, for me, it is working. And I recommend others to also vote. If you don't understand it, ask people who are close by.
In the 2019 elections, only 15,000 of the over 150,000 inmate population cast their ballots. Now the Department of Correctional Services is setting a higher benchmark. They are hoping to get 100,000 inmates to register to vote. The department is of the view that voting is a fundamental right that should not be denied to any citizen, including those who are currently serving time in correctional facilities.
We are correctional services providing department, and therefore anything that is likely to contribute to the rehabilitation of offenders, we have to look at it in a positive way and do what we can in order to ensure that there's more and more of that happening in our centers. That is, programs that promote the creation of decent and better citizens out of these lawbreakers.
Meanwhile, the registration of South Africans living abroad has increased significantly.
The international segment of the voters' roll for out-of-country registrations stood at 18,000 South Africans ahead of the registration we had this past weekend. Following the registration weekend for out-of-country citizens, this segment of the roll now stands at 29,318. Out-of-country registration can still continue via the online registration process that the Commission has developed and which is accessible through the Commission website.
However, the Commission's hands are tied on the closure of 3 missions in war-torn countries like Israel, Sudan and Ukraine, where it appears expatriates will not be able to vote.
The second thing is that there have been some questions in relation to the 3 jurisdictions where the International Relations Department has indicated that for security reasons, these will not be open. And that is something that is truly beyond our control. It is something that is legally enshrined in terms of the locations where voting can take place. And, although time is marching on and the window of between May and August is coming closer, it is certainly our hope that those 3 jurisdictions will not remain closed. But that's not something that we're in a position to be able to control.
The IEC has committed to delivering a better registration weekend than the last, which was marred by some incidents of protests. Voting stations across the country will be open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The IEC has made an impassioned plea to South Africans to go out in their numbers to register to vote on the 3rd and 4th of February, as this is the last and final voter registration weekend before the proclamation of the elections by the President, which is expected to be announced soon. Natasha Piri, SABC News in Centurion.
And staying with voter registration, the 11 parties in the multi-party charter for South Africa are holding a joint registration event at the Johannesburg City Hall. This is to encourage South Africans to register this weekend to vote. Now, this will be the final voter registration weekend before the proclamation of the elections. Now, over 23,000 voting stations across the country will be open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Today also marks the last day of inmate registrations across the country's correctional facilities. We now take you to our reporter, Natasha Piri, who's monitoring the story. So, Natasha, how's the final push by political parties ahead of voter registration weekend?
Well, a very good morning to Mkolis and of course to our SABC viewers. Well, it seems as if all the parties are actually going all out. What you're seeing right now on stage are the various leaders of the multi-party charter. Of course, you would know that the multi-party charter now has 11 leaders, or comprises, I beg your pardon, policy of 11 political parties, namely the DA, the IFP, the FF+, Action SA, ACDP, the SANCO, the UIM, SNP, the UCDP, AK2 and UNP. And of course, what you're seeing now is somewhat a show of force from the various political parties. If I'll ask my colleague Vanessa to actually show you the various political parties that are actually here. As you can see, various supporters from various political parties. The DA, like you're saying right now, is seen in the shots. You're also seeing Action SA right now. And of course, all these members have been rallied to come through ahead of voter registration this weekend. And of course, also to garner members from their community, to garner South Africans who haven't registered to vote, to go out in their numbers to go vote. You would know policy, like, from that briefing of the IEC yesterday, the voters roll actually has surpassed the 27 million mark. And of course, the expectation from the IEC is that this number will actually go up and actually increase this weekend. This weekend is the final and last voter registration weekend before the proclamation of the elections, which will be announced soon. Of course, just a reminder to South Africans that voting stations will be open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. across over 23,000 voting stations across the country. And what's also important to note is that Home Affairs offices will also be open as well. So if you probably need a temporary ID or you need to collect your ID, you could start off at the Home Affairs office in Policy and then head to your nearest voting station to actually go register and vote. Of course, the program will start shortly, and hence you can see the up and downs that have actually been made by the various political party supporters here at the Johannesburg City Hall. Of course, we will have an opportunity to speak to various leaders of the multi-party charter later on. With that said, it's back to the studio.
Okay, Natasha, let's leave it there. Thanks very much indeed for that update.